Okay, so this is the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Monday, August 14th, 2023. This update is going to be a little bit different in that we're going to step away from the excitement and drama of the stock market and focus on something slightly less exciting, which is our data centers. Specifically, the data center at Panther Creek and the data center at Scrubgrass. So I've got two slides to share with you, and we're going to have a conversation about what's contained in each slide. Let's go and pull up the first slide, please. Okay, so this is a satellite image of the Panther Creek data center. Now, at the sort of like on the upper right-hand corner of this image, of this slide, there's some verbiage here that I'm going to read because it could be hard to see on the screen. This is from, I believe, our Q4 2021, so, fourth quarter 2021 investor presentation. And bear in mind, this took place sometime in like March, early April of 2022. All right, it says, constructed data center at Panther Creek and began installing miners in December 2021. Mining capacity built out to approximately 60 megawatts out of 80 megawatts as of March 24th, 2022. Then it says 101 strong boxes built to date, and in parentheses, approximately 101 megawatts. So, as you can see, I've then sort of broken this image up into three sections, right? The upper left-hand corner has 24 what appear to be strong boxes. The lower, sort of like lower center left quadrant has 20 strong boxes. And then on the right-hand side, there are 36 strong boxes. When you add all those strong boxes together, we get 80 strong boxes, which would seem to suggest that there is an 80 megawatt data center at Panther Creek based on the bullet point that indicates 101 strong boxes built to date, and in parentheses, around 101 megawatts. So that implies it's about 1 megawatt per strong box. Okay, back to me for a moment. Now, that slide is, I think, very intriguing because Greg, our CEO and co-founder of the company, has mentioned in previous interviews that we have about roughly, say, 70 megawatt data centers. And by the way, this isn't about parsing specific phraseology or anything like that, but it's just to give us a little bit of context about what we're talking about here. That we have roughly, say, 70 megawatt data centers, and that the goal is to always be somewhat connected to the grid because, remember, we do have the ability to toggle between sending electricity that's being generated at the power plant either to the grid or to our data centers. So so it gives me a little bit of pause. I'm like, well, am I doing the math correctly? Am I looking at this correctly? If I say, hey, I think Panther Creek has an 80 megawatt data center, but I kind of think it does, and I'll explain why in right now. Actually, here, let's pull up the next slide, please. Okay, so now we're looking at a satellite image of Scrubgrass. Now you'll see on the left-hand side, okay, of what you're looking at, it says 24 units, roughly 50 megawatts, and then it says Northern Data. So that quadrant of the data center, those units, so to speak, I believe are what we ultimately ended up with stemming from our Northern Data agreement, which was essentially terminated during Q3 2022, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember the exact date, but this came up in our investor presentation last year. And it was specifically mentioned, hey, these, these units, so to speak. I forget the technical term that was used. I don't think they were called strong boxes, but basically these, these Bitcoin mining capsules, right? Into which you could put Bitcoin mining machines, represent about 50 megawatts of data center capacity. Okay, back to me for a split second. So just that northern data portion of the Scrubgrass data center yard, okay, say it's about 50 megawatts. And then as we recall, right, Panther Creek was, say, like 80 megawatts. When you add 80 megawatts and 50 megawatts, you get 130 megawatts. And that is the precise amount of megawatt usage which appeared in our key management input, slide deck page during our Q1 2023 investor presentation, which hypothesized or kind of guided, right, the idea that once we reach 4 exahash, right, because remember, we were guiding for the end of September 2023, we'd be at 4 exahash, and the amount of power consumption would be 130 megawatts. So I think between Panther Creek and the portion of the Scrubgrass yard that we just looked at, I think that is the 130 megawatts. All right, let's pull up the slide one more time, Scrubgrass. Okay, now look on the right-hand side of this slide. There are 24 units of an unknown type. And I say unknown, I mean, some of the units in that right-hand side quadrant, like several of them near the top, they look like they could be strong boxes, okay? And I wouldn't doubt that they perhaps are strong boxes. But some of the other units, as you kind of go down, sort of like further down that side of what's highlighted, that to me looks more like the laboratory of the Scrubgrass data center. Back to me for a second. Bear in mind, when Bill Spence acquired Scrubgrass, this is prior to the formation of Stronghold Digital Mining. He had the vision, along with a couple of other key people at Scrubgrass, to say, hey, how can we innovate and create an alternative source for our electricity, right, that we generate here at the Scrubgrass power plant? And that's where Bitcoin came into the picture. So I think that when we look at that portion of the Scrubgrass slide down on the bottom right-hand side there, I think we're looking at what could very well represent those very early embryonic, laboratory phase days where it's like, hey, let's get some Bitcoin machines in here. Let's see if we could actually do this. Let's actually test it. And I think that's what that might represent. How many megawatts? Let's put the slide back up real quick. So look at that right-hand side. Notice I have the 2 question marks, MW. How many megawatts does that represent? All right, back to me, please. I think it might represent an additional 10 megawatts. The reason I say that is because I think we can probably get up to 4.3 exahash of Bitcoin mining capacity into our data centers based on what we've already got. Now, as we said a moment ago, 4 exahash by itself will definitely, let's say an average fleet efficiency of about 32.5 joules per terahash, that'll fit in the 130 megawatts. Okay, 4 exahash at 32.5 joules per terahash will fit inside 130 megawatts worth of data center capacity. 10 megawatts, okay, at 32.5 joules per terahash would represent about a little over 300 petahash. You add 300 petahash to 4 exahash and you get 4.3 exahash. And I know this is kind of technical, and I apologize, but again, I think this is kind of sort of important. At least to me, it's sort of fascinating. I think that's kind of where we're at then. I think to the extent, there is this option, and I don't know, like maybe some of those older lab phase units have been decommissioned or deprioritized. That's possible. But clearly, we have more than 4 exahash of Bitcoin mining equipment coming, that's going to be delivered, right? So yes, we do have this extra roughly 25 megawatts of data center capacity, but we can't really fit that. As far as I can tell, we can't comfortably per se fit that. At Scrubgrass, we certainly don't seem like we could fit it at Panther Creek. But let's just kind of leave that aside for the moment. I think we could conceivably cap ourselves at 4 exahash, even though we could probably go a bit above that. And with that extra petahash that's coming in, just look at the fleet and look at those Bitcoin mining machines that are perhaps that are not as efficient as all this really kind of nicer cutting edge equipment that's coming in, and maybe just rotate out some of that older equipment. Maybe try to find a buyer for it, right? Hey, there could be someone out there who's like, for the right price, we'll scoop those up, and we can then, as a result, have 4 exahash, which is what we're guiding towards, but have that be like a really efficient, type of 4 exahash, right? Not a bazillion machines, that are not very efficient, all put together reaching 4 exahash, but rather, having a very lean, very efficient fleet that hits 4 exahash, and that perhaps we don't go above that. So why have I done all this? Well, I'm trying to better understand the data centers so that I can better perhaps represent that on our homemade Ziner.com dashboard. Right now, I kind of have it set up as if though, Scrubgrass and Panther Creek have like the same sized data centers. I don't know that that's necessarily true. Regardless, though, we did update the dashboard to reflect 3.7 exahash. That's I don't think a controversial decision, right? That's kind of where we're at. So all the computations that are being made are based on that metric. But as I attempt to learn more and more about our operations, I do find this to be kind of interesting. Maybe we do, in fact, have an 80 megawatt data center at Panther Creek and plausibly a solid 50 megawatt data center at Scrubgrass with, maybe roughly 10 to 15 extra megawatts on top of that. Leave a smiley face or a thumbs up in the comments section of this video if maybe I'm on the right track. I don't know. This is just interesting stuff, and I don't know that this really delves into material non-public information. We're talking about numbers that are out there. It's just a question of, hey, is Panther Creek like a bigger data center than Scrubgrass, or what's kind of going on? So it's not so much about like discerning some magic number that's hidden. It's more, hey, what's the distribution of, say, the roughly 130 megawatts that we're guiding towards once we reach 4 exahash. Okay, so that's all for today. I know. We didn't really get into stock market or anything that's kind of more exciting. I promise tomorrow we're going to hit the stock market. We're going to hit a lot of other numbers that I think are much more relevant to most of us, right? But thank you for indulging me and being able to just dive into this somewhat technical minutia regarding our data centers and what's going on with regard to them. So, okay, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we will see each other again tomorrow.